But Brandon, let's move on into our next topic. And before we get into it, and I kind of prep the topic like I do usually, we're going to start with, we're talking about Baker Mayfield and what Oklahoma's win over Ohio State says about Baker Mayfield. But before we get into that, I'm going to turn it to you because I believe that you have a certain something to say to all the Buckeye fans, me included, because I defended Ohio State, and they could still make the playoffs with one loss, but this is a pretty bad loss. I believe you have something to say to the entire Buckeye Nation that ragged on you when we did their preview this offseason.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't have much more to say other than I'm right. And I was right, and I will continue to be right. And the reason I say that is because this is a different Oklahoma team as I believed it would be, and I wasn't sure if they were going to win the Big 12 just because I am very high on the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, but this Oklahoma team is good, and this Ohio State team is just not as good as they may have been a year ago. Now, JT Barrett, don't get me wrong, he's a very good quarterback. He has shown it in all of his, what feels like 6 years at Ohio State. He's like that Perry, I can't think of his first name right now, who played for Kansas, and he never left. It felt like he was there for 10 years. Well, he looked like he had been there for 10 years, but it's one of those things where Oklahoma, they're a very, very good team. Ohio State, also a very good team. But Oklahoma came to play in this one. They came to play in this one. And when you've got Baker Mayfield, 27-35, 386 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then you go out and you plant that Oklahoma flag right in the middle of the field of Ohio State's field, and then you come out and then you apologize. Don't you apologize for having emotion take hold and going out there and doing something that you couldn't do last year and having just a great game and feeling like, you know what, boys, we got this, we played well, let's celebrate. I like it a lot.
Which is funny because one of the headlines here on ESPN for one of their videos is Ryan Russillo said that he believed that Mayfield intended to disrespect Ohio State, especially with that. And that's what I thought of when you were like, no, don't apologize for it. Go ahead and do it. But let's get more onto the game, more so. And with this, we're going to focus more on the Oklahoma side because obviously the winner moved. Like Ohio State, they still have a chance. They win the Big Ten. All of this could be forgotten. We've seen one-loss teams get into the playoff before. However, this was a big win for the Oklahoma Sooners, more so because I will even say I was in the camp. I still am because I don't think they will win the Big 12. My favorite right now, because I don't think Texas is going to do it, is I would have to pick Oklahoma State. They would be my number 2 team to win the Big 12 in my preseason because I believe I had Texas winning the Big 12 this year. I know I was wrong. Laugh at me. But this Oklahoma team, this is one of the things where we see articles now. Yes, they're national title contenders. There's one that I'm looking at here that I kind of wanted to bring up to you where Paul Feinbaum on ESPN compared Baker Mayfield's style of play this past week to a Johnny Manziel.
Uh-oh.
And, I mean, that's the first thought you say, like, uh-oh, because he went on to the NFL, and, of course, his was a completely different problem that derailed his career, but I mean, 386 yards, 3 touchdowns, no INTs in the game. Didn't do as much on the ground as Manziel would have done, but played a near perfect game against Ohio State. I know they started out slow in the first half, but really woke up in the second, scoring 28 points in the third and fourth quarters. With this win, what do you think this means for Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma moving forward this year?
Well, what I want to say is last year the score was Ohio State 45 and Oklahoma 24. This made Ohio State 3-0. That put Oklahoma at 1-2. There were their 2 losses. But now the interesting thing is Baker Mayfield, a tremendous game on Saturday. But what I want to talk about is something that we don't talk about too much on this show.
Mm-hmm.
It's the defense that a Big 12 team played on Saturday night. You held a very good Ohio State team to 16 points when a year before they had 45. JT Barrett threw for 4 touchdowns last season against Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. He threw for 0 this year and then threw an interception. On the ground, J.K. Dobbins was the only guy really getting anything going outside of, Barrett, who had 66 yards. 72 and a touchdown from Dobbins. And last year they were torched on the ground. Weber had 123. Curtis Samuel had 98 and a touchdown.
Who's now in the NFL.
Yeah, who's now in the NFL. This defense deserves a lot of credit. This Oklahoma defense deserves a ton of credit because they were able to hold down a potent offense, a very potent offense, and Ohio State couldn't figure them out. It was really something for me great to watch because I'm high on Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Ohio State, I just didn't feel like they were the team that was, going to have a perfect season. I didn't feel like they were the same team that they had last year. And clearly they're not, but they weren't going to be as good as that team. The 2 running backs they had and lost now due to graduation, tough losses. And I thought, though, too, that it would be interesting to see how Oklahoma would play because of the losses that they had at running back, at wide receiver. But you still have Baker Mayfield. And because of that fact, you still have a chance to win every single game. And Baker Mayfield clearly showed that on Saturday night.
Well, and the key thing that I was listening to an interview that Mayfield did, I believe, after the game, and he talked about last year, and he made it sound like this one was circled on the calendar. We remember it from last year. They were out for revenge in a way. And the way he kind of talked, I was like, I know this is going to sound dumb to say, but I was like, he's the leader of this team. And I know you hear that and you go, well, Ricky, duh. Would you get hit in the head with a shovel? You didn't know that beforehand? But just the way he talked, I'm like, if he has this attitude the entire season, they can go undefeated. That's what I feel now with this Oklahoma team. And just to kind of carry that into the next level of they think about if they're going into this game thinking about that, the rest of this season, they have to be thinking last year when it came to the college football playoff, them, just like Penn State, snubbed, didn't get in last year. But then Baker Mayfield knows because he was there when they made it for 2016 as the number 4 team. They basically got spanked by Deshaun Watson and the Clemson Tigers. That game, those were the worst semifinal games to watch. I remember watching both of them on New Year's Eve. The worst games to watch. Clemson blew them out 37-17. Alabama completely shut out Connor Cook and that Michigan State Spartan team. And then they don't make it the next year. There's that little bit of redemption that Oklahoma wants to win the Big 12, which they will have their Big 12 conference championship game again this year. But just hearing him say a little bit of that just for this game made me think of that in a bigger picture of you know what? This team behind closed doors probably has that. It kind of reminds me of the Fad Five for Michigan way back. I know it's basketball, but that we gonna shock the world. That's what I think Oklahoma's mindset is going to be this year. Not necessarily shock the world because we know they're good, but hey, you know what? Everyone picked against us. He even said for this game, 80% of people picked against us, and we proved them wrong. That's what this season is going to be because I'm assuming that we are not in the minority that have Oklahoma outside of our top 4, our playoff prediction coming into this year. I mean, I didn't have them in. You had Oklahoma State in over them. So that's why I feel like this game catapulting them, and this whole season's basically going to be the revenge tour for the Sooners to try to get back to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think, again, winning this game for Oklahoma, it means so much because I think a lot of people have probably penciled that in already as a loss for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, they can only have one more loss. Where's that going to come from? And that's a big thing for them to be able to win this game, especially for somebody like me who has Oklahoma State beating Oklahoma later on in this season. So that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's absolutely huge. And I think a lot of people would say, well, it'd be very difficult for two teams from one conference, one Power 5 to get in. I mean, I've done it.
Hey, people think that Ohio State and Penn State should have got in last year.
Yeah. Yeah, so Oklahoma, this is, for me, this win is bigger for Oklahoma than the loss is for Ohio State. Why? Because it's Ohio State. They could go off now and they could win every last one of their games for the rest of the season. They're still going to be considered a playoff team. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. It's Ohio State. They could go out, lose one more game, and people will still want to put them in the college football playoff because it's Ohio State. Well, so I think the win is much bigger for Oklahoma than the loss is for the Buckeyes.
Well, and I mean, I'm looking at their schedule now, looking forward, and based off of in the preseason, take those thoughts that I had, throw them out the window because now we've got to see most teams play 2 games. Tulane should be an easy non-conference win for them, but the conference is where really I'm looking at. Based off of, we didn't know what to expect from Baylor. We've seen them in 2 games, lost to a 35-point underdog in Liberty, lost this weekend to the Roadrunners from University Texas San Antonio. You're garbage, Baylor. Get out of here. Sooners going to beat you. Iowa State, which I know they lost this week, but I did want to say, did I not say the Iowa State game was going to be a close one?
You did.
Probably a 3-point game. It's always a close one. Oklahoma should get that win. Texas, without how they played, I know they blew out San Jose State. David Fales was crying.
Was that the game that you called an upset and you picked San Jose State?
No, I did not.
Was that the game? Are you sure?
I did not. It was.
Are you sure?
No, it was East Carolina. I picked East Carolina over West Virginia. That was my upset special.
Was it? I thought you had picked them over. Who did they play again? Who did Texas play again?
San Jose State. That's what I said. David Fales was crying.
I really thought that you had picked them. So I'm I'm watching that game and I'm like, man, Ricky's a dumbass.
Go back and play the tape. I picked my upset special was the East Carolina State against West Virginia. Didn't end up well because West Virginia, I believe, blew them out in that game. The 3 opponents that I think now can pose trouble for Oklahoma, but when I say trouble, use air quotes. Kansas State, however, we haven't seen them go up against a Power 5 team. We'll get that this upcoming week, I believe, in Vanderbilt. Oklahoma State, that could be a top 5 matchup with how late it is and where the rankings go. And then TCU this year has been a good team. I mean, this past week, blowing out the SEC team in the Arkansas Razor Pigs. They're not even Razorbacks. They're Razor Pigs after this. Kind of putting the spit on the hog and just rotating it around that fire is what the Horned Frogs did. Usually, I know in Louisiana, that you're eating frogs. They had themselves a nice succulent roast pig this past weekend at Texas Christian. So those are the teams where those 3 games, maybe they get upset. But, I mean, after this game, you got to be high on Oklahoma only because of what they were able to do. And I'm going to ask you this question because, I mean, now there's even, you look at ESPN, you look at the videos, and there's even videos now from, College Football Live where it's they're absolutely a college football favorite. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're not a national championship team to me. Alabama still has a spot because they haven't lost 2 games this year. They could still lose once, and I'll put Alabama in my playoff, maybe most likely my national championship. And the Trojans still haven't lost yet. The Trojans haven't lost yet. The Huskies haven't lost yet. There are other teams that I would put. Clemson hasn't lost yet, but I'm not as high on Clemson this year as some others are. There are other teams that I would still put in that national title over Oklahoma.
Well, and thank goodness Sam Darnold looked a little bit better this week than he did in week one. That week one was a little let's shake the rust off. But thankfully he was able to look pretty darn good against the Stanford Cardinals,
who did not. This was their first big game, because I know they blew out Rice in their first one, their first big game without Christian McCaffrey. So that was a huge loss that they were dealing with. But Oklahoma, I'll ask you this: are they after this? Are they an absolute college football favorite for you? And two, can you look at the side of people that say they are a national championship contender and look at them seriously in the face and go, okay, yeah, I buy what you're trying to sell me. I don't buy it completely because I'm not buying it, but I at least get your sales pitch and I get what you're trying to sell me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll listen to the sales pitch all day if you're talking about Oklahoma, and the reason I'll do that is because I would have listened to it last year when they were 10-2 and people didn't put them in there, and I think that they should have been a college football playoff team because of the way they finished. Not the way they started, 1-2, but because the way they finished. Would have done the same thing with Penn State because, again, how they finished. And I think that the only reason why I will struggle to put them in right now is because I am still, again, as I've mentioned, so high on Oklahoma State and think that Oklahoma State will be the team that ultimately bounces over Oklahoma to be in that college football playoff.
Last thing I want to ask you, and I saved this to the end because I wanted most of the segment to be about the Oklahoma State Sooners and Baker Mayfield, but I want to look at the other side for a little bit in Ohio State, the fan base that you made fun of at the beginning. Not made fun of, but you basically proved them wrong because you were right.
Well, I didn't do it. I didn't go out and play the game.
But you rubbed it in their face a little bit, as you should, because you were on top. I will admit, faux pas on me. I picked Ohio State to win this one.
But I also want to say, as much as I'm not even kiddingly. I mean, I was correct, but Ohio. This doesn't. It's like, and you'll have to watch my show. This week.
That's what I think with
Brandon Swanson.
Wednesday is
check it
2
out.
p.m. Central Time
and 12 Pacific and 3 Eastern. It's like when the Patriots played the Chiefs, and something's wrong with the Patriots. They suck. They're terrible.
Or everyone coming into the game.
And just the day before, they were saying, Patriots, they're going 16-0, right? They're going 16-0.
Or 15-1.
No one's giving the Patriots no one's giving the Chiefs the credit they deserve. And everyone's saying, what the hell is wrong with these Patriots? We also can't say that there's all these things wrong with Ohio State and not give Oklahoma the credit that they deserve for beating a very good team. So, yes, Ohio State lost.
But don't take anything away from Oklahoma is what you're saying.
Don't take it away from Oklahoma, but also remember that this Buckeye team is a good Buckeye team.
And I'm not trying to take anything away. The thing that I look at in this game is, think back to a week ago. We asked ourselves where it was like, you know what? Ohio State didn't look like themselves until like late in that game against Indiana. And I came out and said, no, they have the weapons, they have the defense. It's just shaking off the rust. They eventually got it. They'll get it going. In this game, though, what was wrong with JT Barrett? Only 183 yards, 5 on the average per completion. No touchdowns, interception, a QBR of 21. I'm not a great quarterback, but Brandon, I believe I can roll out of bed and maybe get a 21 QBR. I think on a good, on an A+ day, I think I can get a 21 QBR. I think I can do that, maybe even exceed a 21 QBR. He just didn't look good in this game. And that's not good for a team that you need a quarterback like him. Because it's really like Paul Feinbaum said about him. It's like, this is the final shot. Like, we've seen this in the past. You've been benched in the past for other guys. There's no one here to take your job. It's you. What is this going to mean when they go and play the Michigans and the Penn States this year?
Yeah, and if Michigan continues to look the way they have defensively, it's not going to be too pretty for JT Barrett if he can't get it figured out. And again, it's one thing to look. It's one thing to go out and look really, really, really good against the Kent States of the world. like Clemson. But when you have to come and then go up against an Oklahoma Sooner team again, I've bashed on the Big 12 every chance I can because they don't have a good defenses typically. They came up with a really good defense on Saturday, only allowing Ohio State, a very high-flying offense, 16 points. You don't want to see that too often if you're Urban Meyer. You don't want to see that. And JT Barrett certainly has to get things turned around and corrected because the schedule will be kind of easy for a couple of weeks, but then you've got Penn State, and then you're going to end the season with Michigan. And it could come down to that Michigan game being super critical, especially if you beat Penn State. If you beat Penn State and then you still only have one loss, it comes down to you're going to have two losses or you're going to still only have that one. And people love you and Raiders love you so much more if you only have that one loss. If you have two, they can make the case for you. But if you have one, it's like, they only have one. It's to a good team. Because most people can probably assume that Oklahoma is going to be right around there, too, at the end of the season. But Barrett's really, really, really got to turn it around in a hurry. Less than 200 yards, no touchdowns through the air, and a pick. Not the game he was looking for. Last
year, and this is what I'll kind of end on it as my stat to look back on. Last year, there were only two games all year, where this Ohio State team, and I know they had different weapons, guys like Curtis Samuel are not there this year, but there were only two games where they scored under 20 points. The win at Michigan State, where they won 17-16, and the shutout loss to Clemson in the college football playoff. Only times they scored sub 20 points. And looking at JT Barrett's stats, there were only, want to go with, 4 games where he had no touchdowns. No touchdowns in the 48-3 win over Tulsa. Didn't need him in that one. He also had no touchdowns in the 24-20 win over Northwestern. Also had no touchdowns in the double overtime win against Michigan, and 0 touchdowns, 2 picks in the loss to Clemson. So this isn't something that we haven't seen from Barrett before, but really to me, he was the Achilles heel for that team, for this Ohio State team in this game. But I want to turn it on to you guys. What do you guys think? First off, what the main segment was, which is Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield. What does this win do for Mayfield and Oklahoma moving forward? And then also about Ohio State. What does this say for Ohio State, JT Barrett, Urban Meyer, everybody? It's not a death sentence by any means.
No,
you
it's
can
not.
Still get into the college football playoff with one loss, but now you got to beat Penn State. You got to beat Michigan. You can't lose to one of them. So let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.